What's that?
First sentence.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your comment.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
The record will reflect that Councilmember Daigle has an excused absence.
All right, we'll now go to clarification for items on the consent calendar. Does anyone have any questions or clarifications? Councilmember Gardner.
Number 4. This is a public works on the storm drain, and it talks about unknown underground water flows. Who's going to? Oh, Dave, good. And I'm wondering, have you talked to John Kapler about this? Because this is an area where we are going to focus on water quality, and if this is an unknown input into the system, that could be the culprit that we've been trying to work with. So do you know if this has been communicated to John?
Yes, it has. John was actually out there and watched it. It's actually when we installed the structure itself, we ran into a pipe underground, and we had all kinds of debris, trash, concrete in there, and I think we were right on the skirts of an old landfill or something. And there was some pipe we couldn't identify where it's coming from, but it was discharging into this void. So we did address it, put a better foundation in. The water's still under there, not quite sure where it's coming from.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Is it still discharging? I mean, was it capped off when you did the work? Or?
It wasn't capped off. It was a pipe that just came right into the excavation. It must be draining from something in there. It could have been a pipe in the landfill and it was draining through it. So we allowed it to just stay where it's discharging, which was in that basin. It is something we're going to watch. On Nancy's case, we were going to look at the bacteria counts in that CDS structure, and should we have high hits, maybe we could do a stormwater diversion there or something in the future. But we're aware of it, and John's in the loop on that. Did I answer your question, Mr. Henn?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Petros. Mr. Hill.
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Henn.
I have none.
Mr. Selich.
None.
And I have none. The next item is the bid administration update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. So Tara Finnegan is going to present this item. This is our opportunity to discuss with you a staff proposal, and it's presented to you so you can comment on it, as well as members of the bid and the public, to tell us if we're headed in the right direction. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tara.
Good, turn the mic on.
I think I have it this time. Good evening. Good afternoon, actually. As you know, for the past 12 to 18 months, we've been working with four or five of the city's business improvement districts on ways we can streamline their administration and some of their marketing. Tonight, we would like to talk to you about those discussions, get your input, and perhaps some direction on how we can move forward. First, for those that aren't familiar with the issue, the city has, as I mentioned, 5 business improvement districts, or BIDs. 4 of those were formed under the Parking and Business Improvement Area Law of 1989. Those are Balboa Village, Marine Avenue, Corona Del Mar, and the Newport Beach Restaurant Association. Our 5th bid was formed under the Property and Business Improvement District Law of 1994, and that's the tourism bid. Essentially, the difference between the two 1989 Act bids are a committee of the city. They're governed by you. They are subject to all of our laws and policies. A 1994 Act bid is a bit more independent, like our tourism bid is managed by Visit Newport Beach. We've been hearing some concerns from our 1989 Act bids for a couple of years now, ever since the city downsized and we no longer have economic development staff dedicated to supporting the bids. They would like more city staff support. They do find the laws and policies cumbersome. These are business owners with limited amount of time, and some of our contracting and other requirements are very difficult for them. And they really like to make quick and independent decisions, and that just can't happen when you involve government oversight. Our concerns, of course, is that we've seen some disparate marketing efforts. There's some redundancies in what they do. They all have limited budgets, and yet they're spending money on websites and brochures. Overall member participation tends to be low, and we see a few members carrying most of the workload, and it takes a lot of staff time from city manager's office, finance, and the attorney's office to administer the bids. So our question has been, how do we alleviate the burden on the bids and on the city? Last year we came to you with an idea to outsource bid oversight. That didn't work so well. So then we spent a few months thinking about how else we can make this work for everyone. One of the ideas we had was to perhaps convert the larger bids, the Corona Del Mar bid and the Newport Beach Restaurant Association to bids under the 1994 Act structure. Both of those bid boards declined that conversion. We also talked to the smaller bids, Balboa Village and Marine Avenue, about perhaps converting them to merchant associations. And both of those groups actually like the idea and support that concept. To put this in context and why it kind of sets up the proposal we have coming before you, the third column, the assessments, really is the revenue generator for the bids. As you can see, Balboa Village and Marine Avenue, it's about $17,000 a year they bring in assessments. The larger bids, it's more significant, about $100,000 or more for those bids. So when we talk to the smaller bids, Marine Avenue and Balboa Village, we proposed that we would help them form not-for-profit merchant associations, that we would ask the council to enter into agreements with each of them for up to 5 years. And each year, we would provide $40,000 in revenue or in money to each bid. In year one, if they would be willing to work with Newport Beach and Company or visit Newport Beach, the city would provide an additional $10,000 to help them with branding and their websites, but that money would go to Newport Beach and Company. And then staff would also help coordinate the disestablishment of these bids. There's some risk involved for them. They lose their ability to assess. They lose our support. And they do have to take on more responsibility as board members. Of course, the benefits are they are more independent from the city. And the funding that we're proposing actually exceeds their current revenues. It also provides an opportunity for up to 5-year agreement if the council agrees, where now they go from year to year. We renew these bids every year. So they basically live from year to year. This would give them the ability to plan longer term. The larger bids, as I said, they did decline our offer to help them convert to 1994 acts. So Dave met with these board members and asked them to kind of compromise with us. We would also give these bids $40,000 a year for up to 5 years, the additional $10,000 in year one to help with their marketing. We would continue to pay for a bookkeeper in the transition in the first year. In the future, they would absorb that cost, and they also talked to us about perhaps they would share the bookkeeper, and they'd also share the hiring of a bid administrator and the cost of that. The things that have to stay the same simply because they still fall under that 1989 Act, they still fall under your purview. We need to continue to agree on their consultant selections. But the city wants to, will assign a staff liaison, but a diminished role, not one that goes and takes the minutes and posts the agendas and does all of the administrative work. They also asked us if we would consider, after year one, asking the council to perhaps raise their contracting authority. Currently, they're capped at $10,000. And Dave thought if the first year of the agreement went well, that's something we could bring back to you and ask you for that in future years. They also would like to have their consultant agreements with terms up to 5 years. Currently, as I said, all of their agreements are 1 year because we renew them annually. They have risk and benefits, too, that they've been weighing. They do retain our oversight as a 1989. We still have to be involved. They have to follow all the laws and policies. But they're willing to assume more costs and responsibilities, but that does carry some risk to them. We would also be backing off on the administrative support we provide. There's also, the benefit is there's a possibility of some more independence for these bids down the road. So again, the proposal is to convert the two smaller bids to merchant associations and to help the larger bids remain as 1989 Act, but they would assume more responsibility for their day-to-day operations. That concludes our presentation. We're open for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Hen.
Yeah, would you put the slide back up on the city matching funds?
Sure.
Okay, so, this slide, this is the current circumstance where the city provides matching funds. And the two bids there, Corona Del Mar and the Restaurant Association, are up there for $38,000 each of matching funds. You're proposing to give those bids $40,000 a year, though, under this new proposal. Do those matching funds go away?
Yes.
Okay. So essentially, in terms of risks or impact to the bids, I that's a wash, I guess.
Essentially.
Whereas in the case of the two smaller bids, I see their matching funds go away, but we're proposing to award them $40,000. So they're actually a little financial ahead, before sorting out all the issues of websites and bid managers and all of that. Okay.
So if I may continue in that line, the first year they would get $50,000, assuming they would tie in with Visit Newport Beach to help coordinate their website and their marketing message, which I assume we would encourage. I mean, that's an incentive.
That's the incentive, yes.
That we want to have happen. They're getting approximately 10, 20, they're getting $30,000 now. So this would give them $20,000 more their first year, and then $10,000 more for 4 years after that. What happens in the sixth year then?
Well, two comments on what you said, Mayor Pro Tem Hill. One is that the $10,000 for marketing with Visit Newport Beach, we don't mean necessarily that would automatically stop after the first year. I think if that's working well for Newport Beach and Company, we may want to encourage that to continue, maybe with a different agreement with Newport Beach and Company directly. Our thinking with the 5-year horizon was not that it would end after 5 years, but that's about as long as I felt comfortable recommending to you to bind the city.
Okay. And so if I want to take this to the top level of thinking, all of this adds up to some dollar amount, and that dollar amount is less than what we were spending with our 2 or 3 staff positions that we had for this effort previous. Is that good logic?
That's good logic.
Is that correct logic?
That's correct logic. Not only is it less than what the 2 staff members were spending, but you'd also want to include the finance time, the city attorney's time, the city manager's office time on top of that.
So I guess where I was going with this, and I like that news, is that this is being smarter and faster and better with our funds in helping these enterprise zones.
We hope so, yes.
But the city attorney's office, for example, would still, when there's an issue, they're going to come to the city attorney, or are they going to hire their own attorney?
I think the idea is for the 2 bids that remain 1989 bids, they would still come to the city attorney, but for the other 2 that spin off for merchant associations, they would have to hire their own attorneys.
So every contract would be reviewed by the city attorney's office as it is now?
For the remaining 1989 bids, that's
Right.
correct.
So the savings for those 2 bids in terms of the city attorney's office, do you anticipate it being any different?
You're dealing with 2 bids instead of 4, so there's somewhat of a savings.
There, okay.
Yeah.
But not for those specific bids?
That's correct. Yeah, we still review those contracts.
All right, and then, but we would have less time with other staff members. Would the finance department still be reviewing all of their financial statements, or because they had this independent person that we've hired, would we just say that's fine and we accept that? So how does that work?
As with the city attorney's office, ultimately, finance department would have some oversight over their financials. However, we do believe there would be less day-to-day oversight. I mean, currently, Dan, our finance director, is spending about 10 hours a month reviewing their documents. We think that would be greatly diminished under this plan.
Thank you.
Yes, going back to the question of the city attorney's office oversight, if in fact, though, we do look at the contracting term going from annually to 5 years, there would be a reduction in the oversight. You would be looking at contracts on that single term and periodically through, but not on an annualized basis. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct, Councilmember Petros, but I think the 5-year contract was really for the Merchant Association as opposed to the 1989 bids, which remain annually renewable. So it wouldn't affect those 2 remaining 89 bids.
No, that's not correct, by what I understand, that they could enter into a 5-year contract with the clause saying unless the bid isn't renewed or something annually.
That's correct, pending the annual renewal of each bid. Right.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Selich.
It's my understanding that the 2 smaller bids would be providing annual reports to the city council on how they spend their funds?
That's correct.
They don't have to provide an accounting like the other two, but just provide a simplified annual report on the expenditure of the funds?
Correct, to the council. As a nonprofit, they do have to submit an annual financial statement, but you could request that, or it's up to the council whether or not you would want to see that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other questions, let me open this up for public comment. Are there members of the public who'd like to comment on this matter? Please come forward.
Mayor Curry and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. Since this is a study session, I have submitted some written comments, which I think are available in the lobby, and I hope that before making a decision on this, you will find time to give them your serious consideration. Although I am obviously just one of the 86,000 residents in the city, I think it would be fair to say that in the last 2 or 3 years, I have probably attended more bid board meetings than nearly anybody else. And I would like to say that based on my observations, the people serving on the bid boards are all good people volunteering to do what they sincerely feel to be in the best interests of their districts. Yet there are serious problems with this entire concept. To start with, the 1989 boards are not functioning as advisory boards as envisioned in the Street and Highway Code. As we've heard, they're functioning as administrative boards, spending money on projects and making decisions in which the board members, good as they may be, are deeply conflicted because they have close financial ties to the decisions they are making. In addition, as we heard, they are spending not only the money that is involuntarily collected from the other business people in their district, many of whom have no interest at all in what the bid is doing, but they're also spending these matching funds from the city's general revenue. And although the public can watch the process, we have essentially zero influence over how that part of our money is being spent. As Councilman Hill said at one time, government is done by those who show up, which is perhaps a good thing. But as I think I also said before, the underside of that is that it often turns out that those who show up get to eat the cake and those who don't wind up paying for it. Should these bids choose to become private, non-governmental merchants associations supported by whatever voluntary membership they can muster, then the idea of continuing to support them and indeed increasing the amount of taxpayer funds seems beyond the pale to me, unless you're planning to offer the same offer of support citywide to anyone who claims to be a merchants association. That sounds like a very expensive proposition to me. And I think it's fair to ask, if the city really has such surplus funds burning a hole in its pocket, wouldn't it be better to use them to pay off our debt, to save them to pay for future municipal projects, or if they're truly not needed, to return them to the taxpayers in the form of lower taxes and fees? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. Are there other speakers? Please come forward. It's on. Jim Walker, the Newport Beach Restaurant Association bid. I'd like to thank the City Council and the staff, and particularly Tara and Dave Kiff. We've been through, as you know, a lot of meetings and trying to find a common ground and resolve, and I think that the proposals that have been made before you are exactly that. You know, the bids are looking at how we can, particularly the CDM bid and the restaurant bid, how we can utilize some of the same people and minimize our cost and move forward with the funds that are available to us that we do have in our bids that are used predominantly, at least in the Restaurant Association, to create more awareness of Newport Beach as a destination and thereby hopefully raise our revenues and increase our taxes so that those taxes can help pay for police and fire and the very people that protect the citizens of Newport Beach. So I hope that you will consider that proposal and pass it. I think it's in the best interest of both associations as well as the city. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Other speakers, please.
Mr. Mayor, Bernie Savalstad, Chairman of the Corona Mar Business Improvement District. As Jim mentioned, we've been working with the staff and the city for the last year, off and on, in regard to this matter. I think that this proposal that the city has given us is a compromise proposal that I think can work with the Corona Mar bid. I think that the only tweak I would like to make, and I think that could probably come up next year anyway, and that's the fact that the bookkeeping be paid every year by the city, not just the first year, and think about it in the future. But other than that, I think that there's a way that we can live with this. I think we can do a good job as we've done. So I know Ed Selich and Nancy have seen what we can do in Corona Mar, as well as the rest of you up there for the city. So I think that this is a good proposal that we can live with. I think it'll help the city reduce some of their costs, and also would be able to benefit the bid. So thank you.
Thank you. And are there any other speakers? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment, bring it back to the City Council. I would echo the comments of Mr. Walker and Mr. Falstad that we support that. I think this is a good idea. I think staff has come up with a good compromise, and I appreciate the effort that's gone into this to reduce the costs and make this process more streamlined. Any other comments? Mr. Selich?
Yeah, I don't see anyone from the Marine Avenue bid here, but they did take a action at their meeting, I think it was back in November, agreeing and to move ahead with this concept for their bid.
And as it relates to the Balboa Village bid, I know they are also supportive of this approach, and so that's a good thing. One of the benefits that I'm particularly looking forward to is the oversight of marketing and website management by Newport Beach & Co. To provide a better integrated and we hope better executed product for the benefit of the bids and actually for the benefit of the city and visitors to the city. And I would encourage the other two bids to seriously consider availing themselves of that same help in some fashion, because I think the more universal that integrated approach is, the better off actually all will be. I would hope that the others would agree after having some experience with it. So just would provide that encouragement.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Do you have the direction you think you need?
We do, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next item, the CIP look-ahead.
So, Mr. Mayor and council members, this is something we started to do either last year or the year before, where we give you an early look at what we're preparing for the capital improvement program. This allows you to say whether you want something higher or lower, or whether you agree with staff's presentation just as it is, and then we would later come back to you in May, the typical timeline, with the second early look. It's just a little later in process before your budget adoption at the end of June. So Dave Webb and Pat Thomas are going to present that.
Just before you start, is this presentation identical to the one that was distributed with the agenda?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mayor, council members. We did want to take an early look and get your thoughts and views on various components of our budget we're putting together right now for a presentation of the draft. Just as a reminder, there's a lot of different funds that go into our budget every year, particularly the CIP budget. And up on this screen, you'll notice the kind of history of the general fund component of the CIP. And back in 10-11, we had about $1 million that was going in. We had to significantly cut this back as we went through some of the lean years. We raised that to $2 million in 11-12 and back to $3.6 in 12-13. And then the goal this year, we're trying to get back to about around to $5 million. Not a firm commitment on that, but that's kind of what the budget's built around. And again, the general fund really is looking at funding necessities and maintenance, repair, identified facilities, streets, sidewalks, various areas, prioritization of our revitalization efforts, and you'll see that as we go through the slides. The first area we're looking at is our facilities, and these are the kind of facility areas we're looking at in the coming year. First one is the 15th Street restroom complex, and I'll speak in terms of 15th Street. This is 15th Street on Balboa on the peninsula. The street, as you're aware, in there it's kind of a commercial area. We've had a recent undergrounding district that went through there, and it's in very bad shape. It's broken up. So we need to do something with the street, and we started looking at the facility at the inn, which is the restroom, and it's not in very good shape, too. So we're thinking on trying to put something together on that to spruce up that area, tie it all together, and we'll be bringing some concepts maybe to council later on as we get that together.
Is that still, has there been any further thought of expanding that beyond simply a restroom?
Yes, there has.
Okay.
And
We'll hear that later.
yes. We're also looking at, in one of our parks, the San Miguel Park has a restroom in it, and it's in really bad shape. Our municipal operations folks spend a lot of time putting maintenance into that building, and there is a picnic structure outside that they actually have taken off the wood top. Now it's in pretty bad shape, but they'd like to completely rebuild that. So we're looking at putting $500,000 in that. And I'll note on the side, if you look at the numbers there are various initials next to it. And the FFP stands for our Facility Finance Plan, and General Fund, obviously GF. You'll see gas tax and others in there. And that's where the predominant funding would come from, as proposed. Next, we're looking at starting some of the fire station rebuilds, and again, we're just putting the budget together. This would be for the design of one of our fire stations. This is Corona Del Mar Fire Station 5. The fire chief has recognized this as his highest priority. I know there's still probably a discussion around the fire model and how we staff this, but the current station's about, I remember, 2,900 square feet. We might have to go a little larger than that, so the design process would start this year.
Are we also talking at the same time to library services? Because that was, when we initially talked about this, there was a thought that fire station might need some additional acreage, not acreage, but square footage, and that might impact the branch there, and so we would do two designs at once.
We haven't taken consideration the library in this proposal. We could. We were just looking at the fire station for now. There was talk about a joint community room and other items. When I talked to the fire chief, we thought we might have to go up on the station because the lot is so small. Again,
rather than out, because that was the initial thought. If we went out, we'd have to do something else.
Correct.
With the library. Okay, thank you.
Another item we have this year, we have in the police facility, they have 18 HVACs on top of the roof. They're about 18 years old, and they need replacement, so they've requested to replace all those. That's for $150,000 in general fund. And then we had another request from Recreation at the Newport Coast Community Center, and this has to do with the stage. The stage was originally built as a community function. They thought they'd use it, but they're finding, after all the years, they're not using it at all, and they have a higher demand for meeting rooms. So for a small amount of money, we think we could parcelize that off, create a wall, and create a new meeting room, yet still keep the roll-up door in back and use the functionality of it. So there's a small amount of money for that. This would be the design and build of that. Then we get into our Big Canyon Reservoir annexation. This is kind of in combination with the consolidation of the 2 yards, where you also have to move some of that over to the Big Canyon Reservoir site. So we have in this $750,000 to do the construction of a yard that's about a 4,500 square foot series of garages for storage and another 4,500 square feet of open space for laydown. And we're currently designing that right now, and we hope to construct it next year. Yes.
Is that on the lower part of the Big Canyon Reservoir or up adjacent to Pacific View?
It's close to Pacific View. It's on the higher part, but it's more towards the west than towards, let's say, Harbor Day School, the east side. We'd be on the west side. There used to be a couple buildings there now, and our pumping station right there. Right. It'd be back in that corner.
Okay, thank you.
And then we talked about this last year. We decided not to go ahead. This year we're again proposing to do the rehabilitation of the lifeguard headquarters. We've got the design roughly done on that. This would be the $1.3 million to basically redo the interior. We need to do the drywall, the plumbing, the electrical. It's an older building. We put some money into the roof recently. We put some money into the structural integrity of the pylons. So we feel it's in pretty good shape, and if we do an interior remod, we can make that building last another 20 plus years. So we would ask for the construction money this year on that.
Dave, the numbers that are up here and that you're going to be going through, those are the total cost of the project, whatever is being proposed, without regard to what comes from city matching funds or, so forth. Is that right?
That's correct. In this case, that would be the construction amount total.
Yeah, so when we get to the end, you kind of sort down what's the residue that has actual general fund impact as it relates to that $5 million allocation. Is that how it works?
I can. I don't have a complete list. It's as you see here as we go along the way. For instance, we have general fund for San Miguel, $500,000, another $150,000 for the police facility, but I didn't keep a complete summary at the end. I'll try to point it out as we go.
Okay.
It does add up to about $500,000. And just on that note, $5 million. Just on that note, some of these have prior funding. For instance, the lifeguard headquarters, we had money this year to do the design, so the total cost would be about $1.5 million.
So, Dave, can you tell us how you come up with the list? I assume that there's a bigger list than this, and somehow you narrow it down?
We do. We first of all identify it through our master plans. In this case, we have the facility finance plan that has a series of projects in it that have been identified, and we're trying to move those forward. We also have street master plans, water master plans, sewer master plans. We also have projects that come out of the community. For instance, the revitalization projects had a prioritization, and you'll see those in here later. We also have requests from the community and various council members that will come over the year, and we try to include those in here, and it basically one long prioritization list, and then we go through a process of trying to figure out what's the highest priority, what we can fund, matching certain funds. Sometimes it's general fund. Sometimes you'll see we can find a grant funding to pay for something so that it frees up some funding for something else. That's kind of the process we go through. So with that, we'll move on to streets. And in streets and drainage, this is primarily gas tax. You'll find Measure M. When you see the GT, I'm referring to gas tax next to the number, and Measure M2, we're in the second cycle of Measure M funding. That's the M2. We have the first project that we're looking at is 15th Street, Balboa. This would be tied to the restroom that I just talked about. This would be the street construction on it, hoping to put in design money. This would also include the permitting of it. If we do some kind of streetscape or anything working with the community, we'll need to go through coastal permits, as you know. So there's a process we'd like to start on that. Next project on here is a landscape project, and this is 15th Street, but this is up in towards Costa Mesa. This is 15th and Moreau. Along that stretch on both the north and the east side of the street, there's a mobile home park that has a dirt median in there. And we'd like to add some landscaping, not a lot of cost here, to clean that up, put a curb along there. Right now we have people park in the dirt area and a lot of trash and debris in there. So there's a proposed project for that. Balboa Boulevard landscaping. This is one of the revitalization projects. It was the #1 priority, and we're currently designing that now. We're about 70% complete with the design. This would be the construction money for that. And if you recall, this goes from 22nd Street all the way to Coast Highway on Balboa Boulevard, where we'd be adding new medians and streetscape and also rejuvenating some of the existing out there. The next project here is a concrete pavement program down by Island Avenue. There's various streets we've been working on. These are in pretty bad shape, Bay Avenue and Montero streets. We do complete concrete reconstruction. And then we have
Just a second. On concrete reconstruction, Ocean Boulevard is also concrete, and I know we've talked about at some point doing some work there because we can do then with the extend the sidewalk and everything. How far down the road do you see that?
I don't have the pavement management plan for me. We can look. It's down the road a ways. I know we. Do you happen to remember that?
No, I don't. But like you said, it's the concrete roads themselves are structurally in good shape. So that allows the life of those to be extended a little bit further, and we don't have those necessarily in the asphalt replacement program. But eventually, as an example, in this case, the Bay Avenue project is funded out of Measure M2, and that is something that we can apply for those funds for in the future.
And the other thing is with the concrete, it makes it look much worse because we fill in the cracks with black stuff. Could we fill in the cracks with gray stuff? So it wouldn't, next time we have to do things like that, so it wouldn't look quite so, I mean, because as you say, the roads are perfectly drivable, but they just look derelict because of that. So if we could maybe be more aesthetic when we make those temporary improvements, it would help.
We brought that up to municipal operations, and they can get a gray sealant in there. We also have a residential street overlay program. This would be, for instance, University and Levita. University over by the Mute Center, and Levita is over by University and Jamboree. Some residential streets that need overlaying. That's a little more than the slurry concept. We include our annual sidewalk, concrete, gutter, and curb replacement for $500,000 in there. And the area we'll be focusing on next is Newport Heights. This year, we're currently going to, and starting in the next few weeks, we're working on the concrete. We'll be starting the slurry soon in West Newport. Next year, we'll move to Newport Heights. We typically come in and do the concrete first, and then right below it, you'll see the annual slurry street seal, which comes back in the spring after all the concrete patches and everything are in, and we'll do the street sealing. So those are both general funded currently. And I would point out, this is something we've been doing many years with council's approval, is putting general fund into our street program to catch up. We had a pretty low pavement rating, and we've been climbing on that. These two could qualify for gas tax or Measure M if you chose to use that general fund somewhere else. Yes.
To that point, why wouldn't we want to go after Measure M funds or other alternative funding? Timing?
Timing and grant calls, and typically the funding's geared more towards large artillery overlays and things like that.
Aren't these turnback funds?
We could use turnback, correct, but we use turnback, as you'll see on the next page, to other asphalt and concrete replacements. We only get a total of about $3 million a year in gas tax and turnback, and it doesn't keep up with our rehabilitation efforts. So we have been supplementing on the concrete side and the slurry side general fund, just and for the council's benefit to go back. About 5 years ago, we put the city on a 7-year slurry cycle. We were not on a cycle, not doing a good job, so we decided to break the city up, go every 7 years, we'll slurry every street in the city, which is the recommended procedure. So I think we're on year 5 right now, and we have 2 years to go on that. Next set of
Excuse me, Dave, I have one more question.
Yes.
Do you happen to know what's the approximate per square foot cost on that slurry seal?
Well, it's a good question. That's why tonight you'll see one of your items. We're asking for a little additional money. We budget roughly 10 cents a square foot. We just got a bid in for a little over 11 cents a square foot. Your last bid we got last year was 8 cents a square foot. Oil prices, as you know, have been climbing, and that's a direct factor in how much we pay. So we're a little behind the curve this year. It's still not a bad price at 11. I've seen a lot higher than that, but we were budgeting 10 currently. When you have 35 million square feet, it adds up.
And this is the more substantive slurry seal that's mixed with sand and, that
correct
provides better.
Let's move on to more of our arterials. We're looking at Campus Drive and San Joaquin Hill arterial overlays. This, again, wouldn't be a slurry. This would be an overlay, larger asphalt overlay. That's about $1.1 million. And this is some of those big dollars I was talking about, Councilman Petros, how we're using up a lot of our turnback. This is Measure M turnback. And you'll see below it gas tax again on Dover Drive and Westcliff. Dover Drive and Westcliff, this project is the design component of a future project. If you recall, the Orange County Sanitation District was recently showing you their projects, and they're going to put a large trunk main on Dover Drive from Coast Highway all the way to Irvine Boulevard. We've been waiting for years for them to get that done so we could then come in. We'll be designing new roadway here, and we'll also be putting in new medians and landscaping because it's pretty much reached its useful life. The construction of this will come probably the following year. We'll program the construction money for that project.
Will we be able, as we're doing the redesign, to incorporate some more bike-friendly features? It's a very narrow bike lane with the sidewalk on one side and all that.
We could do that because we're completely redoing the street and restriping it. So it will be a tough, I know, up further up by the grade school because it's real narrow there. Another large project, Jamboree Road paving. I put add next to this because this is the portion between campus and MacArthur, and the city of Irvine are actually doing the project, and we're reimbursing them. The west side of Jamboree is the city of Newport Beach. The east side is Irvine. So we have money in this year's budget. This is additional money we think we're going to need to do that. And then we have some major arterial street repair money in here for $350,000. Again, Measure M2. We use this to do turn lanes, spot places around the city that are large arterials that need kind of spot asphalt work. Too big for our municipal operations folks, so we package it all into a project and do one during the year. The next project on here, again, is another large one, Newport Boulevard. This is the widening the bike lane improvements on Newport Boulevard at 32nd Street between 30th and Violito. And this would be partly right-of-way money. We have design money out there. This partly is grant money and also match with Measure M2. And then we included this year because we're moving along. Current fiscal year has the design of the Park Avenue Bridge. This is the construction money for the Park Avenue Bridge, and we want to go ahead and program that in. We're working currently on getting applications in with Caltrans and the Coast Commission to start replacement of that bridge.
What is the 1.5? That's not, I mean, that's a couple of steps. That's not a whole bridge.
That is the number that was estimated several years ago for the actual bridge reconstruction. We think that number is low, and so when we go back to Caltrans, we'll be going back and requesting additional money. And this is actually going to be funded out of the federal highway bridge program for the project. Yeah.
I apologize. I have M2 next to that. It is grant money coming in. So as we move past streets, we get into transportation. There are several projects we'd like to take on this year. The first on our list there is Bonita Canyon Sports Park, and this is a request out of Recreation. We have a lot of parking problems in that area. They'd like to do a little modification, striping, curb work to try to improve the circulation and parking in that area for $50,000, and that would be a general fund request. The next project on here is the construction of the East Coast Highway signal rehabilitation. This current year we have design money, and we're looking at rehabilitating the signals between Jamboree and Newport Coast. Some of those we're not doing. We just did Jamboree, but that's the basic length. We won't do Marguerite as we're doing that right now, but there's a lot of signals in there that we inherited from Caltrans, need rewiring, new heads, new pedestrian call buttons, et cetera, on it. So this would be the construction money for that, and that would probably take place construction fall of 2013, I think. Then we're finishing up on our modernization that we started many years ago. This is the last phase, Phase 8. And Phase 8 is a combination of miscellaneous links, Ford Road, Bonita Canyon, University. Some of these we'll directly be doing. Some we are doing with adjacent cities. For instance, Irvine, we have agreements with them. They're going to be doing Bonita Canyon, University, and we'll just be contributing to their larger project. So there's not a lot of money there, but $300,000 from transportation circulation. We also do annual signal rehabs. As you recall, we just recently did Jamboree, Ticonderoga. This would be another $150,000. It's similar to the East Coast Highway money, but it's more citywide. We have a whole bunch of signals, and we go through every once in a while, redo wires, heads, PED buttons, and things like that.
Dave, on the PED calls, the new on the rehab, are you doing the hearing impaired and the countdowns?
We're doing the countdowns. I don't know if we're doing the hearing impaired. We'd have to check.
Those typically are really only done upon request. If there is an individual that is hearing impaired in the vicinity and make a request, then we would be looking at putting in the audible signals as well.
Okay, thank you.
The last item on there is funding we put in for citywide striping, signage, and marking. This goes anywhere from refreshing to citizens and councilors' requests. The last series we used last year, a lot of it went into bike lane improvements around Newport Center to change the striping and that. We found that's a good investment. We tend to use that a lot, so we're going to include another $76,000.
Will we be paying for the updating of the wayfinding signs that to reflect the new City Hall location through this?
No, that would be covered under the $100,000 we currently have for the shutting down of the facility.
Okay.
Moving to our next category, under Parks, Harbors, and Beaches. Our first category there, we have Bay Beach sand management and minor dredging. We have money in this year's budget we're using to do some maintenance work. We're going to ask to add another $100,000 to that. The goal here is to basically start some of the dredging efforts in the Grand Canal, the slough. We have to start the process work, the application, the testing, and getting that moving. So we want to add money to that program. We have tide gates behind that for $100,000. We've been doing a series of programs. Eelgrass, harbor piers maintenance. We have quite a lot of piers around the harbor. And if you recall, recently we widened those a couple years ago to add digging docks. But we now have to go back and do some float modifications, some hardware, some of the planking has to be replaced. So this would take care of that. The Marina Park item is in there for the additional $10 million to get that project funded. Moving along, I think my time's running long here. Catch me. I'll go a little quicker.
I just meant to say what TL means.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a time limit.
No.
That's Tidelands funding. So we have on this page, and I'll slow down then, we have Tidelands funding and we have facility finance plan. The COM is contributions. Sometimes we'll have contributions. So we have Marina Park in here. We have the Newport Harbor dredging permit. This is the RGP permit 54. You currently have $100,000 in this year's budget. Chris is already starting the application and the analyst process of it. This will be additional money added to that to finish it. This number's probably high. I think we're going to kick that down to $300,000 in the next draft to you folks, because we think we're getting good bids basically from our consultants to do that work. We need a little more funding from the Titlelands for the mooring field realignment. And then the next item here is ocean pier maintenance. And this, if you recall, we're doing this about every other year. We address our ocean piers. They're wood piers. They take a lot of pounding. We usually spend $200,000-$300,000. I added $600,000 in here at the request. We do need to talk to you about the Newport Pier. We recently looked at the building at the end of the Newport Pier, and if you've probably been out there recently, it's been boarded up. The tenant has left. We did a building survey on the building, and what we're finding is it's probably going to take about $500,000, $500,000 to bring that building up to code to make it usable. The building's probably only worth $750,000, so we probably want to have a discussion with you what you'd like to do out there. The reason for the additional money is if you choose to take that building down, which could be a likely consequence, we need to get underneath that building. We haven't been under that in quite a while. The piles and everything that are under it would have to be replaced, so we'd have to do substantial work on that pier while we have an opportunity and there's no building on it. So there's a large number on that. Below that is Sunset View Park. If you're not familiar with Sunset View, it's across from Sunset Ridge Park. There's the dirt area there on the east side of Superior. And we've had a request up on the plateau, the high part of that, to go ahead and finish that out above the Hoag Hospital cogeneration plant there. So in this, we're requesting $200,000. I don't know if we'll use it all. There's $150,000 to be contributed by Hoag, but it does have some limitations. It's for planning irrigation surface work. I think we might have to do a little grading there as we look at it, so we put a little general fund on there, $50,000, in case we have to do something outside that agreement. The next one on here is, we put some money in this budget possibly for a pocket park. We hear there may be some opportunities in the future to maybe develop a couple pocket parks or a pocket park. It hasn't been well defined yet, so we wanted to go ahead and start programming money in there. That would be a general fund expense.
Dave, I think there's one that's been forgotten here, and that's when when the development agreement with the Irvine Company was approved last summer. I asked for the funding to enhance the Back Bay View Park be restored that we cut out a few years ago. That was like around $350,000, if I remember correctly.
So that would be an FFP, Facilities Financing Plan project, because I think that's where that money is kind of earmarked and represented at this point.
And thank you. We'll put that in there. And thank you for reminding me. There's one other program that we have to do in here. We are currently in the design efforts for Bayside Cove Public Walkway on Marine Avenue, and there's a couple $100,000 we need to program into the budget. So we'll include that too, so it gets in the budget for construction.
Yeah, and that's also coming from the Irvine Company.
And therefore needs to be in the Facilities Finance Plan.
Before you leave this slide, I want to spend a little bit more time on the issue about the restaurant at the end of the Newport Pier, just to put some thinking in your minds, or encourage some thinking as to whether that needs to be replaced with another restaurant, or whether it should be just a flat pad, or I don't know, even food trucks going out there on a regular basis. It's an opportunity to do something new out there, but I'd encourage you to think about how you'd like us to direct us on that, because it is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to do something new out there, because the old restaurant had been there a really long time.
Okay, moving on then. Next category we have is water quality environmental programs. In this program, we've been successfully getting money from OCTA under their environmental program for water quality. We're going to program some more money in here this year for the Tier 1 and Tier 2 grants they've been giving us. Currently, in this $772,000, it says M2. That would be the entire amount we'd program. I should have broken that down. 33% of that would roughly be general fund, which is about $262,000. The about $510,000 would be coming from a grant program if we're successful in that. We have been in the past. We've gotten a lot of grant awards out of there. We have to program another $32,000 general fund for the ASBS protection. The state ocean plan requires us to do a certain level of monitoring off the coast for both the ASBSs off our coast. So we've worked it down to the lowest level we can, and it's about $32,000 to complete that.
What about the initial work you had proposed a way that we might get some of the water off Little Corona, and we were going to do a test, but we need perhaps to get a coastal development permit, you were saying? Is any of that budgeted in?
We currently don't have that budgeted. The permit itself would be just an application, and it'd take a process to it. The construction would have to be budgeted when we get to that point. We could do that under water quality. There is possible grant money involved there. We'd have to figure out that program, basically.
Okay.
And then the last one we're still working on is a possible project down in Big Canyon Wash, the lower area. We have some opportunities for restoration and maybe trail rehabilitation in that. We're really looking at the city property, not the state property, so we're still kind of putting that program together right now and hopefully have it ready for the final review.
So where's that funding coming from for that project?
It could come from a combination of a couple things. There's some settlement money out there right now that we're looking at. There could be grant money involved. We haven't got the complete program together. We're just starting to talk about what we need to do there. We've been talking with the Urban Ranch Conservancy about doing some work in that area. So hopefully we have something a little more concrete for you in the future on that.
When you say settlement money, was that the money from the Newport Center development agreement?
Was that it was the Bob Costin settlement?
Yeah, but I think they're the same thing, yeah, $3 million.
Same thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's about 1.5 for Big Canyon and 1.7, I believe, for Delhi.
Gotcha.
And then we, last but not least, come to our water and wastewater programs. We've been doing a lot of work, as you know, the transmission main in Corona Del Mar, the cover, so we really kind of cut this back this year. We have a few little projects. The first is the $500,000 for additional cast iron main replacements in the Corona Del Mar area that ties into the transmission work we're doing right now. So we kind of take care of all the issues in that one area, Corona Del Mar. The second project on there is a pump station upgrade. These are variable frequency drives, is what VFD stands for. This is really an energy-saving project, and it ties into some Edison money that we'll be getting, grant money, to save a lot of electrical costs. And then the third project on there is we tend to do point repairs and linings in our sewer system. We have a few more we've identified, so we'll see if we can get to those, and it's a relatively small amount. It's $100,000.
Dave, you had said Corona Del Mar on the first, yet your slide says Newport Boulevard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You want to clarify?
We actually have both of those in there.
I'm sorry, Pat just corrected me. I'm thinking Corona Del Mar because there is money in there. There is some money in here where it says Newport Boulevard, because when we do the widening on 32nd Street there, we have a large 19-inch transmission main that runs through there. It's very old, so our goal is to replace the valves and the fittings before we do the street work. We think the line itself will last, but you change out the valves and fittings. Thank you for pointing that out. So then it leaves us with a couple projects that we probably need some guidance on. These are three projects that we've talked about in the past, and they've come out of the citizens advisory groups. The first one is Bristol Street South median landscaping. If you recall, this runs from Birch down to Jamboree. It's on the south or the north side of Bristol Street South. It's a parkway that needs landscaping. It's in the current year budget for $500,000, and what we programmed, if you remember, was there was $125,000 in general fund, but we were looking to get a match, some kind of landscape improvement grant match. Usually it's called an ICE-T grant. We haven't seen any this year, and I don't know if we'll see any in the coming year. The new federal bill that they passed called MAP 21 didn't have a lot of money for landscaping, so I'm not sure where we're going to be on grant funding on this. So the question that would come up is, do you want to keep looking for grants and keep it the way it is, or would council want to program additional money to complete the project? Again, you'd need about another $375,000 in some funding.
Mr. Mayor, we've had this on the list for a couple of years now, I think, and I, for one, would like to see the project move ahead. I think we've told that community that we were going to do this. We've gone through the public process on it. My understanding, it's completely designed and ready to go to bid. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What are the chances that something might change at the federal level in the next year that would open up some grant funding possibilities?
You know, there's been some recent talk, and Pat maybe have some ideas too, but I've heard about a stimulus. I've heard about a new highway bill. We are dealing with the federal government and the state right now, and both of those are a little shaky. So, you know, I'd give it a 50-50 chance. We could check further with OCTAs. Sometimes they'll hear something. That's where the money usually comes through. But I couldn't give you any kind of real 80-20. It's really kind of out there right now.
Dave, I was driving on that street the other day as a passenger, and I noticed that there had been some plantings there in front of the shopping center. Are those related to the widening, or I thought we'd already done the project, frankly.
There's been a little work. We recently had some development. They put some street trees and other things along there, but we haven't done any work on the median side, the freeway side that I know of.
I think you're talking about the south side of the southbound, and this project is the north side.
The north side, so in front of the shopping center.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're northbound or southbound? Well, northbound was part of the bridge. We're talking about southbound, north side of southbound.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we should have a map, but there are several landscape projects we've done recently. The Jamboree Bridge widening, we did median work along there. We also did the north side of the freeway, which would be Bristol Street North. We just recently completed all the landscaping there. There might have been just a little bit near Jamboree, but I'm not familiar with the other areas. We could look at that. But this basically is that project, though.
Dave, as I understand it, MAP 21 is a 2-year horizon. The OCTA is putting together their revenue forecasts for the upcoming long-range transportation plan next month, and it's very, very tenuous at best. So I don't think it's a safe bet to go after grants on this. If it has been around for this long, I would also echo Mayor Pro Tem Hill.
Maybe we should consider loaning the federal government some money so they could move forward with their project.
I'm sure they'd love that. If it's council's desire, maybe would you give us some guidance? Would you like to see this general fund, and should we try to take it out of our current allocation, which might mean we cut back something, or maybe we move some concrete money to gas tax and free up some general fund? Just looking for some guidance on how you'd like us to make up the $375,000.
Well, I think that before I would approve it, we'd have to see what we're giving up, if we are going to give up something, because so far we haven't had any objections to what's on the list, and I don't think that we should right now do the horse trading. It should come back with some proposals so we can look at it and have some time to think about it.
Yeah, this is always the good and the bad side of the early look. If it's a little early to start the horse trading now, but it helps us if you offer a relative level of importance, although understandably I might hear that all three of them are very important.
Is there, by the way, is there somebody jumping on the roof?
Could be.
I think
I hear beeping.
I think they're compacting
is that
the
it?
soil, I think.
outside. Yeah.
So we'll do that on that project and try to see what we can come up with funding and prioritization for you to look at. The second project on here is the West Coast Highway Landscaping Project, and this was a larger project that the West Newport CAP came up with. It was lower on the priority. Balboa Boulevard was first, and then they wanted to look at this. Staff has been working with Caltrans to come up with ways to accommodate the landscaping, and we are making inroads. Mr. Torres has worked with their attorneys to come up with some maybe creative legal language. Pat and I both met with the director, and they're still open to it, but we still hit a lot of rules and regs as you deal with the state. So we just want to put this out there. If there's, I guess the next thing would be to start developing some kind of plans on that, and you're looking probably $300,000 to start the planning effort on it. Just want to get a council's feeling on that, if they want to start trying to find funding this year, or should we complete what we have and wait till next year on that?
Well, I think this, this project nearly would double the general fund contribution if we did that, and I think it's probably a little bit too big to try and shoehorn in this year. So let's look for some alternative funding. Let's sequence this with the other West Newport projects that may be coming up through the facilities financing plan. So we're really doing the most priority projects in the west side. This may or may not be the most highest priority.
I guess, my view is I'd like to keep it on the list. I think we've still got a lot of things to think about between now and the finalization of the budget for next year, and I wouldn't want to drop it off the list. I don't necessarily disagree with the mayor's comments, but This is the last major gateway to our city that really needs help. And so for that reason, I'd just like to keep it in front of our eyes here before we...
Not the last major, the number 3 is another major.
We will keep it there. I always look at these projects, I'm always looking for grant funding. Maybe something comes up through MAP 21 or something that we could get started on, get a leverage going on.
I think what might inform this, too, is your progress with Caltrans. If you find that there's an opening with them to advance a small part of it, that may change the dynamic. I concur with Councilmember Henn that we should carry it, but I also see the realities that we can't do everything all at once, and we've got quite a full plate, as the mayor has indicated.
Well, if we green-lighted this, though, wouldn't it, the best we could do in this coming fiscal year would just be do design and permitting, and we wouldn't even be getting into construction until the following fiscal year. Wouldn't that be true?
Correct. We'd start just like we did on Balboa.
So it really isn't 4685 for this coming fiscal year. It would just be the design component of that.
Yeah, and I recall the design's about 300,000.
300.
Now, that's a really good point, and that really does then change my view of this, that we really ought to do whatever we can to get the design done so that this thing is teed up and shovel ready at the point that there might be an opening.
And permit.
Yeah.
This ends at,
No, you're fine.
okay, it ends at Newport Boulevard, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Newport to the bridge. Okay. And then the last one is something we promised to get back to you. We are currently working on the revised concept for the Corona Del Mar entry. We're hoping to get that back in April or May for you. But again, this is a project that's out there. Council currently just funded a traffic study this fiscal year, $25,000. We've got a concept kind of being developed, but this would be the full funding of it. Right now, it's just out there. We're showing as a contribution. We're not sure how to fund it. So we could wait till we come back with the concept and have a discussion, or your guidance.
I think that whatever the concept is, there's going to be a great deal of discussion in the community, and I know this is important to the bid, but I anticipate quite a bit of work with the community, so that we should work on this, but I don't know how far we'll get after the concept, because there's quite a divergence of opinion on removing the parking spots and where we would put the parking spots and everything, and I know they're talking about a parking study at the same time.
So what I could recommend, if you'd like, is maybe we leave it out of the budget. We go through the concept. We're going to go to the annual meeting soon, and we're going to bring the concept and start the dialogue. I believe Pat and Mike already went to the Resident Association and started it. We need to meet with the bid as the field gets a little more clear and we know what the funding or exactly what we're building. We could bring it back for your appropriation at the time.
I mean, I know that will be a Ed, how do you feel about that? Okay.
So with that, I guess that ends the presentation. If there's any other guidance or questions you have or things we've missed or you'd like to ask, open any questions.
Well, I think this is a very good presentation, Dave. I really appreciate it, and it's nice to see an early look at it, and as we're thinking about lots of other things here that's swimming around, ideas and so forth, so I appreciate it.
No other comments? I'll open this up for public comment.
Mayor Curry and members of the council had 2 comments. One program I don't see here is our ongoing rehabilitation of old streetlights, converting them over to LEDs. I don't know if that's on hold for a year or perhaps just was another thing that accidentally didn't get on the list. And the second comment I wanted to make, and I'm sure this is one you don't want to hear, is regarding our plan to spend $1.85 million on the Balboa Boulevard landscaping. Have we verified that that project does not need a coastal development permit? The reason I'm asking that is because my recollection is that it relies very heavily on palm trees and other non-native plants. And when Marina Park was before the commission, they made quite a point that we could retain and even move around our existing palm trees, but they wouldn't allow us to add any new ones or even replace those if they died. So maybe the council would be curious about that.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. My name is George Schroeder, and I'm a 25-year resident in Newport Beach here. I also would like to say I thought it was a very good report. I know this is going to come back in, I guess, a few more weeks, so I guess I'll be more concerned when the horse trading starts to happen then. I think it was very comprehensive. I guess the one item that the last speaker brought up, that item does not include palm trees, and that is an item that I think is very important, and it was at the top of the list of the Citizens Advisory Committees, and I hope it won't be impacted in the horse trading. I'm here to support that along with almost everything else that was there. So, again, thank you very much, and we are watching this closely, and again, I guess in those lean years in 2010 and so forth, we had to cut back, and there's things that couldn't be done, but as a property owner and a landlord, I know that oftentimes it is expensive to maintain things, but it's even more expensive to let them go into less repair. So I do hope that these items can get done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. Are there other comments? Please come forward.
Mayor and Councilman Bernie Swalstad, Chairman of Corona Mar Bid, I'd just like to have you keep your mind open in regard to the entryway at PCH and MacArthur, because I'm reviewing the plans tomorrow with Mike Senacory, and we'll bring it up probably at our bid meetings Thursday. But hopefully, I can't see either it'll be all the way in or all the way out, but we'd like to get it done this year, so I'd like to have it in this year's budget. So we'll be back to you through Nancy in regard to the status of this, but I'd like to see it in this year's budget, not a year and a half from now.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council.
Just a question, the LED, the replacement, does that come under this budget, as Mr. Mosher asked?
Currently, this year, we have no program for LED lights. We have been doing them. In the current year, we did a project by Newport Harbor High. It's $150,000. Our next project was about $600,000. We didn't feel we could afford it this year, so we would, again, we have a lot of general fund demands. We were going to put that off till next year.
When we put in the LED, don't we save money in the long run?
We do, but the payoff was
So far down the road?
It's 3 or 4 years, but there's still an upfront cost of several $100,000, and we had so many general fund demands, particularly landscaping, that we thought we should put that off 1 year. We could add it back in again, but we'd have to take from other programs, I think, that are a higher priority.
Thank you.
I would just note that I think it's important that our city is able to move forward and expand our funding for capital programs and continue to keep our infrastructure solid and to enhance our community through these investments. So I commend staff for bringing these ideas to us. Thank you very much. The next item is a review of the Southern California Edison Rule 20A program and project priorities.
We're just bringing that up. There you go. Yes, thank you again. This is an item we want to bring to council. You probably haven't looked at Underground District's Rule 20A since about 2000. So just for a quick refresher, the Public Utilities Commission requires Edison put aside money for undergrounding, and there's several types of underground districts. There's a Rule 20A, which is basically what we're talking about today, and that's ratepayer money allocated to cities. You've seen Rule 20B recently. That's where residents or developers can underground at their cost through bonding or cash. And there's actually a Rule 20C, which is really applies to small districts, 600 feet or less. So we wanted to focus today on your Rule 20A program, and this is money at the council's discretion where they're going to use this money. When you get into Rule 20A, the Public Utilities Commission sets priorities on how to use this funding, and it has to be used towards, there's these criteria on here, very heavily concentrated overhead facilities, and Edison usually talks about 2 circuits. Most poles you'll see have like 3 wires on top, that would be 1 circuit. If it has 2 on top of it, you could have 2 or more circuits running. So that would be one area they'd say that would qualify for Rule 20A. The other thing is very heavily traveled arterials and thoroughfares. If the street is designated an arterial or major highway in the general plan, it also qualifies if there's utilities on it. And then lastly, they have a category that says if it passes through a civic or recreation or scenic area, you could do that. And so keeping that in mind, we move on. The Rule 20A allocations are brought up, as I said, by the PUC, and they're based on the total number of meters in a city and also the total number of overhead meters. And it's kind of a complex formula, but the simplest way to say it is they take 50% of the allocation, they put it towards the total number of meters in all the cities. And then they go back with the other 50% and they divvy it up by the number of overhead connections you have. Meters can be either underground or overhead. And that's how they come up with the formula. And for 2013, Newport Beach's formula is there $274,961. We get that every year. It changes a little bit. So this year we received our funds, and you can also mortgage Rule 20A out for 5 years. That's another important component. So if you look on the balances there, we basically have, with today's allocation of $274,000, we have $1.53 million basically in funds available today. And if you add in our 5-year mortgaging, you'll come up with basically another $1.374 million that we can use towards that, for a total of $2,910,000 available to program today.
Does that $1,535,000, does that include the discounted credits that we bought, or do we spend that on something else?
No, that includes it. We were actually in a mortgage condition going into this, and we recently bought credits. If you recall, we bought credits from the city of Garden Grove and the city of Mission Viejo. One was for about $1.8 million, another was for $188,000 last year. So this map here, it's a little hard to read, but if you look on here, this is all our underground districts. And on the lower left-hand corner are Rule 20B districts, and our upper right-hand corner are all our Rule 20A projects on the lower left, and Rule 20B projects on the upper top there.
Are they color-coded in any way?
Well, they are. I can't really point to them. I could point to that screen, but you won't see it. The blue ones on there are already complete. And
are they A or B or?
There's a combination of both on there, and
Okay.
the next slide will show you just the A projects.
Okay.
There's also inactive projects, things that have kind of got interest and they never went anywhere. We have proposed projects in red, and then we have failed projects. We only have one of those. Actually, there's 2 of those. Balboa Island had a fail, and there's one in Corona Del Mar. So this next map shows you just the Rule 20A projects. And mostly those are blue. There are a couple green on there. The color changes to proposed, and we'll talk about those later.
Wait, what's the gold?
That would be another proposed level. The greens are actually approved. They're not done yet. They're approved and proposed.
And the blues are already done?
Blues are completed, correct.
Okay, thanks.
So, and just to note, too, there is an error on here. They put proposed numbers 22 and 21 on the gold, and those haven't been established yet. They could be the next numbers, but it depends on what council wants to do. So with that, then we go into...
You said the blues on this second map are complete?
The blues are complete. Those are districts we've done prior as Rule 20As from quite a well back. It'd be well before the 2000, because we just did one back then on Bayside Drive. I don't know how far the program goes back. It must go into the 70s, but we did do a lot of Rule 20As then. The greens are something that council approved already. They were done in 2000, and I'll talk about those in just a second. And then the 2 golds are 2 proposed districts we're looking at and want to show you tonight, because we've had people inquire about those. So the first of the underground districts is District 17. This is Superior Avenue, and this district has already been established. Back in September of 2000, council took an action, and they took 3 districts forward, this being one of them. And I'll go through that briefly. Bayside Drive from Jamboree to El Paseo was District 16 back then. We had Superior added from Placentia to Ticonderoga. And we also had San Joaquin Hills added from Spyglass to El Capitan.
And they were added as A's?
They were added as proposed A's districts. So this district currently would cost $1 million to basically underground. And on the next slide here, I include a photograph, and that's what it looks like today. And you can see the overhead wires there. And we'd have to underground that whole segment there. It's pretty clean. It's one long stretch along the west side of the road there. And that'd be about $1 million to do that district. The next district is 18, and this is San Joaquin Hills. Again, this was established in September of 2000. This would be about $1.3 million. It's roughly about the same length, maybe a little shorter than the last district on Superior. This goes from Spyglass to El Capitan. If you look in this picture here, this is what it looks like. You'll notice these are about very high tension wires. These are probably 66 kilovolts, where on Superior you're probably dealing with 12 kilovolts. So your cost goes up a little bit because you have a larger conductor, a little more protection needed on it. Then we had another district we wanted to...
Dave, can you go back?
Sure.
So is that the only section along this roadway then that remains to be undergrounded, or what?
I don't know that. I would anticipate that, because when council set up the district, they just set the limits from Spyglass to El Capitan, but we could verify that.
Well, all of Newport Coast is undergrounded. So.
I believe that is the last remaining section, but as Dave mentioned, it's high voltage, it's transmission as opposed to just distribution lines, so that's kind of why that's the last piece remaining there.
So there's some lines, though, that fly out above Los Trancos. So do those come out from underground and go above ground and then down again? So there isn't one. I have to go out and look, too.
And I'd have to look. It could be coming out of a track. It could be coming out of a substation up there. This, again, is unique because it's very high voltage. But we could verify that. If you wanted to look in this further, we could make sure the in treatments are done, or verify that it doesn't go further, or something else you want to add to that. The next district we were looking at, and this would be a proposed district, is Balboa Boulevard. And this kind of stemmed out of a lot of discussion we had at the Revitalization Committee, and the CAP really thought, besides the landscaping, they really wanted to see the undergrounding of Balboa Boulevard. So we went back and looked at that. This would go from basically West Coast Highway or right around River all the way down to 26th Street. And the cost estimate right now is about $3.8 million. It'd be stretching the envelope on what we could borrow, and we'll talk about that later. But this is one to consider, and if you haven't been out there, that's kind of what it looks like. There's a lot of overheads. They cross. It connects with a lot of alleys. There is a precaution on this, because if you recall on Seashore Drive, we did an underground Rule 20B district up there, and they went halfway down the alley. If you did a Rule 20A district here, you would have to probably go the other half of those alleys, or you would be in danger of leaving one or two poles stranded in the middle of each alley. We'd have to look at those details. Edison says we could technically probably do that. It'd add a little cost, but you might have some equity issues and things that surface.
Are the other two that propose, have any conjunctions with B projects? I mean, I can see that if I had been part of a B project and anteed up, and then the next block over is doing an A project, that I'd be like, well, wait a minute, this doesn't seem very fair to me, whereas I can see in an area that's more commercial, well, I wouldn't necessarily have the same objection.
I don't show any on our overall map over by Ticonderoga and Newport Heights. There probably was underground because the age of the facility was the late 70s and they were undergrounding back then. So that one's probably clear. And, of course, the Newport Coast side, Spyglass was all undergrounded, so I don't think you'd have any conflicts over there either. So moving on, then another district we've heard about, or actually overhead utilities a couple times, is Hospital Road. And I broke this down in a couple formats for you. There is the first part in red there, and why I'm looking at that is because when you come down Newport Boulevard and you leave Costa Mesa, and there's a lot of utilities at 15th Street, et cetera, you have a clear shot all the way down, but when you hit Hospital Road, you see these overhead lines here, and there's a picture right here as you come down Newport Boulevard there. And we've had discussions with folks going, why can't we get rid of those? Those are the last visual blocks before you see the water in the bay. Good point. The top picture there on the left is basically looking down Hospital Road. It does connect all the way down the hill. You don't see the poles other than crossing Newport Boulevard here. And as you come the other direction from the peninsula up, you'll see the wires again. You don't see towards Hoag Hospital, but you do see towards Old Newport Boulevard. And we've had some folks say, what about Old Newport Boulevard too? There's a set of wires right around in there. So looking at our proposal here, You could do that red area there, roughly, and that would take care of that one visual degradation. That project by itself, without anything else, would be about $400,000, again, going just up to Old Newport Boulevard, not going down Old Newport Boulevard. And if you did it in conjunction with another project, say Balboa or Superior, it'd run you about $100,000 less. It'd be $300,000. I did include the green area because there were a couple people in my lifetime who called me and said, what about in front of Hogue in that area? Well, if you went from where we left off in the red all the way over to Superior, that would cost you another $600,000. So that's an area to consider. You may want to patch that up. You may want to do it as one whole district or connect it with another one.
Can you go back to the Balboa Boulevard one again, real quick? That looks like it's a combination of Rule 20A and Assessment District lines. Is there any way to break that down to see how that would break out? Or is that even possible?
It could be, and again, if you have to actually go out there and look at it, and I'm sure you took some look over the weekend, but the poles only go 1 or 2 poles down the alley. So to try to do a 20A project, you could catch that, but if you didn't collect those 2 poles, you'd leave 1 or 2 poles in the alleys. I don't know if you could get a 20B, that would be where the residents pay for, just to pick up the interior poles in the middle of those alleys. We could pole them on that. I'm not sure why it wasn't picked up originally with the Seashore project. So it doesn't cost a whole lot of money, but every alley has at least 1 or 2 poles that we'd have to talk about. On the other side, you could break it when you go towards the north. There's a good separation point in those.
Okay, thanks.
And just to follow up, we did ask, and Edison couldn't really tell us, can we do a combination district where we do Rule 20A and Rule 20B, i.e. if the city steps up and does Balboa Boulevard, would you folks interior here want to pay for your short portion? They get obviously a magnitude scale discount, but I don't know if we can do that. They haven't done one. I don't think it can't be done. It'd just be very complex. So Hospital Road we talked a little bit about, and I'll show you a picture on that green here. The extension of that is these poles right here as you come into Placentia and Hospital Road. There's a series of 12 kV, it looks like, going down that road. So then recapping this, basically, you have about $1.5 million today to work with. If you mortgage out, you're going to get about another 1.374, leaving you about 2.9 today to work with. Now, we talked with SCE, and they said basically if you start today, if you get a district off the ground today, it's going to take you till about 2016 to get the district started and under construction. So we're in our kind of plan-to-plan mode. We want to keep the workflow going. We want to get something going. If we add our 20A allocations for another 3 years, that's where we come up with the $3.7 million you see there, which roughly would be about Balboa, or it could take care of the other couple districts. So what we're hoping today to do is probably, we just kind of laid these out as maybe priority. Balboa has been the loudest one we've heard about. We've heard about Hospital Road. Superior was an old district council adopted back in 2000, but we really had staff haven't heard much about it since then. And I've really never heard anything on San Joaquin Hills. There may be 1 or 2 people out there, but because the poles are a lot lower than the houses that are up on the hill, I'm not sure what the view issues are. So this was kind of a first stab at a proposed order, but we're surely looking for council's guidance and advice on how you'd like to move forward with this.
Are there advantages and disadvantages? I mean, I understand the B. The neighbors say, we're tired of looking at the lines, and we're willing to pay for it, and then you vote on it, and it's either yay or nay. But on this, there's so many different factors, so we have public views, and some of them are impacted, some of them aren't. But are there any advantages to the city in certain areas to having them underground besides just the, I mean, for Edison, I know that they'd like them underground because they're more stable and all that sort of thing. But for us, are there other advantages as far as besides the aesthetics of it to help us distinguish between one project and another?
Typically, and we've been concerned in the past about reliability of the system. We get windstorms or heavy rains or things. The older systems might have more problems. Balboa Island was one of those. The peninsula tends to have challenges. Also, when you get the houses in real close proximity, there's sometimes concerns about the wires coming loose, whipping around and causing fires and other problems in there. So if you looked at it that way, the higher priority districts might be, again, they'd be the Peninsula Balboa Boulevard because it touches in the houses. You don't see that in the slides with Superior. There aren't a lot of connecting wires and crossing the street. It's really just the backbone. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, and I'm going to say that, I mean, I can see that, all right, we say, all right, we want to do Balboa Boulevard, and then people in Corona Del Mar are going to say, well, oh, we have a very busy street here. What are the traffic needs so that, I mean, we can justify saying Balboa Boulevard, but not, I mean, I'm just throwing out Seaview obviously doesn't get the kind of traffic, but that the various streets, are there traffic counts that we rely on? How do we determine that it meets the Edison standards for traffic?
We pre-screen these with Edison, and all 4 of them would qualify for Rule 20A. From a traffic standpoint, your busiest street is probably Newport Boulevard coming in. I don't know the numbers, but I would guess Superior and Balboa are close to each other. San Joaquin Hills may be the 4th rated highest traffic volumes. There's one other item, too, to note. We are looking to fund landscaping on Balboa Boulevard. The wires are natural tree toppers. It keeps you from getting your trees up high. By undergrounding those, we could allow larger, higher-growing trees in that area. So you might get some aesthetic benefits out of that. Superior already has trees, I believe. I was looking at the slide there. It's only on one side, and I don't think the same issue is involved on San Joaquin Hills. It's already got landscaping.
So, go ahead.
None of this assumes that we'll purchase any other discounted credits from anybody else, but that could happen over the course of the 2 or 3 years going forward. Isn't that right?
That could. In fact, we're still talking to a few cities to see if they're willing to sell some more to us.
Right, so we're more or less $2 million away from having the whole plan done, and we may be able to acquire those $2 million of credits for $1.4 million or whatever the number would end up being through an auction process. So, I don't necessarily disagree with the prioritization. We need to be thoughtful about geographic equity in the city, but I think we ought to probably move forward planning on all of them and then fund them as money becomes available, but let's be aggressive about trying to purchase some additional discounted credits so that we can expedite all these projects. Mr. Hinton.
I completely agree, and that's where I was headed as well, is expanding the pie. And so I very much would encourage staff to, go after these credits. And I think with the last ones we purchased were like 46 cents on the dollar or some such thing.
45 cents on the dollar.
45 cents, I know we've bought some for 50 cents on the dollar and that sort of thing. So anything in that range, it seems to me, it's a great deal for us to do that so that we can do more than just one project here.
Sorry.
I did have a question regarding Balboa Boulevard. Since we are talking about the possibility of doing landscaping, is there any construction cost savings for trying to do all this together? Is there, of course, this is 3 years away if we were going to do that, so I guess that's probably not a good question.
Well, actually, you probably wouldn't save any in construction because the 2 projects would be completely different contractors.
So different, yeah.
But it would allow us, for instance, we've had some discussions on trying to get a little larger tree species in on Balboa. That would be a great opportunity to do that. And I do hear council to take all 4 forward. Our next slide and kind of what we're looking for direction is if you'd like us to go ahead and form the districts, knowing that we have enough to probably do one of the big ones like Balboa, we could start aggressively doing that, and as we get more grants or we have the opportunity to buy credits, we could start adding to it if that's your wish.
I just have a concern with the Balboa one. As to be, would like more information as you bring it back with this whole thing about the poles in the alley and where, we want to be fair to all of our residents, and where we're picking up things that maybe we didn't pick up for somebody else. We need to be careful of that.
I did have one other question with regard to Balboa Boulevard. The peninsula has a terrible track record for electrical service reliability. I think most of that seems to be associated with the Newport Boulevard corridor, but is there any reliability benefit for electrical service for the peninsula associated with doing that project?
I would guess you'd pick up some. Again, you get rid of that. We occasionally have a wire problem with wind and weather. It comes down, you might have an exposed transformer. We probably want to ask that question, too. We have Southern California Edison coming to a study session, I believe, in 2 sessions at the end of April. That'd be a great question to talk about reliability on there.
Yeah, I agree on Balboa Boulevard, but I have the same concern that Councilman Gardner has on the people that didn't participate in the Seashore Drive district, of giving them a windfall for not participating, or I'm not sure what the circumstances were, so I do have some concerns there on, looking into maybe there's a way that we can rectify that through this somehow.
Although I wouldn't want to try to rectify it by creating a 20B district at the same time and going through all that complication. I mean, we'll never get this project done if we have to do that. So I'm hoping there's a solution there to address that short of that.
A non-20B.
Yeah, a non-20B solution.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may, it seems to me that you have a conflict as well with the desire of planting larger trees, that I assume you would not be able to do that until after you did the undergrounding. And that means if you're 3 years out on undergrounding, that means you're 4 years out on doing the improvements.
Couldn't you plant just younger versions of the trees, anticipating that they will grow?
Correct. We could, if we knew the wires are going away, we could put in a younger version, a smaller tree of the larger growing ultimate tree now. It'll take many years for those trees to grow up into the wires.
I guess all said and done, I would not discount the red area of Hospital Road because that is a visual corridor, and I don't think it has a lot of those other complexities that are associated with them.
I guess I'm very encouraging of, let's form all the districts, let's get ourselves teed up so that maybe eventually we can do them all, and then look for these additional credits to buy and so forth. I could picture how this could all come together over the next several years if we sort of press all the buttons. So.
Okay, any other council comments? Let me open this up for public comments. Everyone in the public would like to speak on this matter, please come forward.
Mayor Curry and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosher. You may think I'm against absolutely everything that comes before you, but I'm not. I actually applaud staff's efforts here in undergrounding and your commitment to keeping this a goal for our city. Although it's certainly not one of the most essential things we do, I think it contributes significantly to the quality of our life, not only with respect to the reliability of our utilities, but also allowing us to live in a less cluttered and less gritty urban environment. And I don't know how you should prioritize these projects, but since we're talking about undergrounding, this seemed a perfect occasion to bring to your attention a closely related area that you have some control over, but which seems to be going in the opposite direction, and that is the modernization of our traffic intersections, and to a much lesser extent this switching over of the old streetlights to LEDs. One might think that in an era when electronics have become ever smaller and more powerful, that the traffic control equipment would also become smaller. Yet it has been my observation that as the intersections are upgraded, what were relatively unobtrusive little boxes, sometimes underground, have turned into large, shiny metal above-ground boxes, sometimes approaching the size of refrigerators. And it seems strange that we'd be spending millions of dollars on undergrounding while we're doing that. So I have to wonder what is in these boxes, why they need to be so big, why they need to be above ground, and couldn't an intersection today be controlled by a tiny programmable chip under a little cover in the sidewalk, or perhaps even a chip in the light pole itself? Undergrounding the power poles at great expense only to have them replaced by these new obstructions in our parkways and sidewalks seems a strange program to me.
Thank you. Next, please.
Afternoon, Mayor and council members. My name is George Schroeder. I just want to address the council members' concerns about why we would include Balboa in a 20A. Well, if we look at the criteria for 20A, I mean, that location meets all four of the criteria. It's a unusually heavy concentration of overhead. There is, I live in the area, it's heavily traveled. If you say, well, how about a resident who lives over in Corona del Mar, well, gee, I'd like to have it done there also. Well, that stretch of Balboa, it gets, 100,000 people a day coming down to the beaches and looking at the other two of the 4 criteria designated as an arterial or major collector road. Well, that's what Balboa is. Yes, there are residents on either side, but it's a major thoroughfare to get up and down the beach. When Seashore was done, my family owns a building in that district, and I have a good friend who owns a building. I did coordinate with electrical contractors to pay the additional $10,000 or $15,000 and all that cost. The other people were not even asked if they wanted to be in that district. And also, I'll just say, likely it would not pass because there's a lot of out-of-area landlords for those duplexes. But back to the point, if you look at the 2 maps, 20A was used on Newport Avenue. That's a main, the last and fourth one is in a, passes through a recreational or scenic area. So if you look at the map, if we have residents and tourists coming down to the beach area, just to have that one stretch, having all the above-ground poles where everywhere else they do not, that's a reason why the 20A should be used there. Okay, I guess that's the point I wanted to make. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. Are there any other comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Do we think we have adequate guidance? Okay, thank you. Next item is a presentation regarding the myNB mobile application.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'll give Rob Houston a second to tee that presentation up. But this is an application the folks at home will learn about that you can use from your smartphone or tablet and use it to communicate in a variety of different things to the city. So let Rob take it away there.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Mayor, City Council, this is an update about our app, and it's actually a bit of an update, too, on the customer service strides I think our city's been making recently, and just wanted to give an update on that and the improvements we're making. This year is a year of improvements to help customer service improve for our residents, our business owners, and our visitors. We've got a number of projects that this council has funded and put forward. And most importantly, first and foremost, I'd say, is our new Civic Center. It's a model of putting this great building that's right beside us that's opening in 2 weeks in the center of town, convenient, with 450 parking spots, so parking's easy, designed for customer service. Our permit center and our finance counters are built with customer service in mind. So that's a new model we're trying to focus on. And we're also using technology in a number of ways to build on that model of customer service convenient for our residents, our business owners, and our visitors. A couple quick projects just give you a highlight of that are in that same vein. We're busily working on converting all our electronic documents in the city to make them accessible online and searchable at any time, so 24/7. This is a big project. We've just passed the 2.6 million page mark in the conversion of all our documents. It's hard to imagine we have that many pieces of paper, but the paper's gone and it's electronic. Within the next month, we hope to have our public portal open so that residents and anyone who needs to can search through our documents and find what they need. In addition, in our libraries, we're adding technology in the form of radio frequency ID chips in all our books. Main library will be first to have this device, so it'll make check-in and check-out very easy, convenient, so we're using technology again to make service better. And in the world of apps, we have a upcoming and soon-to-come tour app that we're working on, and this will be an actual way that when we open our new Civic Center and the new library expansion, the plan is to have an app that'll help tour you through the facility in the park. So we're also trying to use service, and people can use that on the weekends or evenings or whenever they want. It's service where they are, whenever they are, just using technology again to leverage that. So that brings us to the app we're presenting today, which is a 24/7 mobile service request application called myNB. And so we'll discuss that in more detail. The mayor said in his State of the City address that we want to make it as quick and easy as possible for our residents and visitors to report issues and to obtain information from the city. So that's what this app does. It's a partnership with a company called Public Stuff. They're in the business of making these apps. There's over 200 cities in the nation that are using this application. We configure it to customize it for our city's use, but they have partners, cities that include Tallahassee, Florida, City of Philadelphia, Oceanside down the coast from us. So they're using this as well. So we're launching this app today. It's available. In a high overview, what it's going to do is allow you to report issues. So from your smartphone device, you can find issues and report them for code violations, maintenance issues, potholes, graffiti, trash cleanup, or dangerous conditions. You can also access information, see things nearby that have been requested, find things to do in town, find the calendar of city events, contact your council member, etc. And it's also going to be a tool for our staff members to serve and serve quicker and in a more organized fashion the needs of our city. It'll be allow them to see and respond quickly to requests, as well as provide information out to the community if the need arises. So the big question is, how does this app work? And so I've brought with me Avery McGlinty, who is our webmaster and mobile guru from the city, and he's going to walk us through how this app works.
Thanks, Rob. The app is currently available for download in the iTunes store for iPhone users and the Google Play Store for Android users. You install the app on your phone. First thing you get there, you'll be prompted to create an account. Really easy. Your first time in, you'll see this page. This will be the page you see in every subsequent session to this into this app. You can click on the header, get some quick profile information about the city, get a link to the city website, and then have a button to follow the city where we can send you push notifications with updates or emergency response information. To create a new request, you just click on the new request icon. You get a blank form. Go ahead and select your request type. We've broken these categories down into kind of logical groups that we've gotten from our website, which we find usable for citizens. Excuse me. You can add a photo. Once you add in your information, click on the photo. You can use a photo stored on your phone or go ahead and take one. The phone will prompt you to do that. Photo gets uploaded.
That's not from the city of Newport, is it, Avery?
It's not from Newport Beach. And then lastly, we'll add a location. The phone automatically knows where you are based on your GPS built into your phone. But if you need to change that location, you just click on the address and you can move the push pin to the specific location of your request. You click the submit button and you'll get an email. It's sent to the email that you used when you created your account with a tracking number. And then at the same time, it was automatically sent to the appropriate staff member here at the city to take action on. A really cool feature about this app is that it allows you to see nearby requests that other people have submitted so that you don't duplicate the efforts, or you can track the progress of other issues throughout the city. So you'll see issues in the area that you're currently at, and then you can pan or zoom to see more issues throughout the city. And this app is flexible enough to allow us to add our own features. So we've gone ahead and added our city news stream, things to do in Newport Beach, the city calendar, and last but not least, information on city council members, so you can see who your council member is and have a contact link if you would like.
Thank you, Avery. That does seem pretty simple. Encourage people to download it and try it out for themselves. One question people might have is what happens to all these requests when they get entered in and come into the city. The app comes with a great dashboard, so basically our city staff will receive this information. It's all centralized, comes in, it gets assigned out automatically to whoever's associated with, say, potholes. It's going to automatically transfer when the service request is submitted to the...
So who handles the snow and ice issues?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. We're still looking for a solution. Yeah, Dave will handle those. That's good. So it automatically routes there, and then as the service request is accepted and in progress, as a staff member updates it, an email automatically goes to the person who requests it, giving them the update. And then as the item is closed and addressed, again, an email goes to the person who requested it. So the person there knows what's happening. There's a tracking number if they want to look it up at any time. So this gives us a lot better information and a way to see what we're doing as staff members to help serve the community better. In addition, it's automatically building reports to a great level of detail that we haven't had before, where it's building, and we can see how many requests we've had, how many are completed, what's the, how long it's taken, so we get metrics for performance to see how well we're doing and how we can improve. So we think that'll be a great feature as well that comes with this app. So really, that's a real fast summary of how the app works. It's 24/7 citizen connection. You can use this app weekends, 2 in the morning, whatever you want, wherever you are. You don't have to find our number in the phone book. You don't have to come to the city during city hours. That's the new model we want to offer. And this is our new myNB app for the city to use. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Rob. This reminds me that 38 years ago, when I started work with the City of Long Beach, it was my job to handle the council complaints, that we dealt with 3-part carbon paper forms to do the same thing. And I think we've come a long way in that time. And I really think the citizens are going to enjoy this once they have a chance to get used to it and use it. And I really think it's going to improve our response times and our whole transparency, but most importantly, our citizen responsiveness to make sure that we keep our city in the shape we want it to be in. And I commend you for putting this together. Are there any comments or questions?
It's actually pretty exciting. I see we have a noise complaint at Harbor Elementary School. And if you look down and drill, it says this is a test. I will look forward to when it will work on an iPad in any direction. It doesn't turn now.
There actually, another piece to come shortly is a web interface, so it'll be a way to do the app through the web. For those that don't have smartphones, it's just being finished up now, so we hope by next month to have that, and you will be able to size that through a web browser.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Henn.
I think this is terrific. I just want to comment on the entire agenda for this study session. I actually really enjoyed it. It was a series of items that are all very positively oriented for the benefit of our residents, every single one of them, and it's just, it's nice to see an agenda like that instead of one chock full of problems that we have to solve. These things are all very indicative of a city that is well-funded and moving ahead in lots of ways for the benefit of our residents. So I appreciate it.
Okay. Seeing no further comments, I'll open it up. Is there public comment on this matter? All right, seeing none. Rob, congratulations, and let's use whatever media we can to get the message out to people about this and let them know that this is a new service available from the city and help them connect better with the community. So with that, we'll move on to public comments.
Public comments are invited on study session and regular meeting agenda items, closed session items, and non-agenda items generally considered to be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record.
Are there any public comments? Please come forward.
Mayor Curry and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosher. Those who have a copy of the blue evening agenda may notice that item A on the closed session part of that agenda is announced as a conference with your legal counsel regarding a piece of existing litigation called County of Orange versus Air California. I am a firm believer in the idea that the more eyes that look at a problem, the more likely we are to come up with a good, a creative, and perhaps even an unexpected solution. So I continue to think that both you and the public would be well served by a more thorough description of what the problem is you plan to discuss in the closed session and why it is necessary to discuss it behind closed doors. County of Orange versus Air California is a code name for the John Wayne Airport Settlement Agreement, which up until last week had been secretly negotiated quite independent of any actual court proceedings or ongoing current litigation. Since both of the major parties to that negotiation were public agencies, it has never been entirely clear to me who those agencies thought they were protecting with secrecy, but however that may be, the draft settlement agreement was very publicly announced last week, and I thought we were embarking on a new era of open, public deliberation on this matter. You will be the ones guiding and listening to those deliberations as our representatives, and without further explanation of what it is you need to discuss in closed session, I'm very uncomfortable with the idea that the public will be seeing the open side of the deliberation, while behind closed doors, you may be going off in some totally different direction based on influences and information unknown to us. And because it is unknown, information that we cannot even attempt to correct. Discussing the deal points and the public strategy half in public and half in secret does not, I think, serve any of us well. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, we're adjourned until 7 o'clock.